His name was Jason, and I can still clearly recall the moment when his eyes begged without a word. He was my best friend's younger brother, freshly 21 and lost in a world that didn't seem to care about him. He had just moved into our neighborhood after dropping out of college, a shadow of the bright ambitious boy I had once known. I hadn't seen him in years, not since those childhood summers when he would tag along behind us, always quiet, always watching. But this Jason, he was different now, grown, broken, and yet something about him drew me in. Maybe it was the pain he wore like armor, maybe it was the way he looked at me like I was the only one who ever saw past the wreckage. At first it was innocent. I offered to help him settle and brought over home-cooked meals, helped him fix up his place. He needed a job and I pulled a few strings to get him an interview at the local bookstore where my friend Rachel worked. He was grateful, but there was something deeper in his silence, in the way he lingered every time I visited. One rainy evening he showed up at my door, soaked, trembling, and desperate. I didn't know where else to go. He whispered, his voice barely audible above the sound of the storm. I gave him a towel, made tea, and sat beside him on the couch. His hands were cold, his eyes red. He said with a cracking voice, "You've always been kind to me," but he wasn't sure what that meant. I put a hand over his and smiled softly. He looked up at me with that haunted gaze, and for a brief moment, time stopped. I wanted to help him, and I couldn't help myself. From that night on, things between us changed, and he began spending more time at my house. At first, it was just for practical things like laundry and the occasional ride to work, but it eventually evolved into late-night talks about life, the kind where the outside world vanishes. Jason was vulnerable in a way that made him appear both younger and older all at once. He confided in me about his struggles with self-worth and the feeling that he never measured up. I found myself looking forward to our conversations because of his presence, which became something I craved, like a familiar melody that played in the back of my mind. I kept telling myself that I was only trying to help, but I knew deep down that one night after a particularly long shift, I found him sleeping on my couch with a blanket that had fallen off his shoulders. I gently replaced it over him, but as I did, he stirred and opened his eyes. "You're always looking out for me. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if more people cared as much as you do," he murmured. "I care about you," in a husky voice from sleep. I answered, wiping the hair off his forehead. He looked at me for a long time before continuing. His words lingered in the air long after he went back to sleep, and I sat next to him for hours, watching his chest rise and fall while he helped me paint my guest room, fix a leaking faucet, and even reorganize my garage. In the weeks that followed, we laughed more, shared stories, and leaned into a comfort that felt too natural. I kept telling myself that I was guiding him and providing him with the support he needed, but my heart wasn't as detached as I pretended. One evening, we went for a walk down to the lake, where the sky was painted in shades of orange and gold, and the breeze smelled of pine. We sat on a bench close to the water, our hands almost touching, and he said, "You make me feel safe," and then I turned to him. "I think I've started to feel something more, something I probably shouldn't," Jason said after he paused. My heart thumped in my chest as I turned away, uncertain of what to say. I knew, of course, but I hadn't let myself acknowledge it until now because it's difficult. We sat like that for a while, saying nothing but watching the water ripple in the last of the light. From that day on, there was a quiet understanding between us. We never crossed any boundaries, but the emotional closeness grew. And one day my best friend Emily, his sister, asked me directly, "Are you getting too close to Jason? He's had a rough time. Don't let him get the wrong idea." All I could say, because I had no response, was, "I just want to help." Jason soon obtained a full-time job and moved into his own apartment across town, but we continued to stay in touch since the space gave us both space to breathe. And I did, but the fact is that I couldn't resist the relationship we had created. He invited me over for dinner one day, and as I entered his home, I saw a framed picture of us laughing on the dock at the lake. "You kept this?" I asked in surprise, of course, to which he replied, "That summer changed everything for me, that you helped me find myself again." Over time, the intensity subsided into something more stable and grounded, and we continued to talk frequently, but now it was more about choice than necessity. My eyes filled with tears, but I smiled and said, "I'm proud of you, Jason." He held on to me for a long time, and although it was no longer romantic, It was a bond that had been formed through kindness, patience, and a hint of love. I wanted to help him, and I believe that we both ended up saving each other.